my niece grow up without a mother. Let me do that, okay? Because, yeah, I want it. I want to taste the pain. You're a fucking lunatic.
But there are people who are acutely aware of the suffering of the world. They may even experience it themselves.
Oh, acute. Yeah, that's a tricky word there. And again, what does it matter in the equation? The heroin addict can be acutely aware that it's wrong to be stealing his mother's Social Security check. You can be acutely aware that it's wrong to be clubbing people over the head in the street to get enough money for his next fix. It doesn't matter if he knows it's acutely wrong, because his addiction will control his behavior. He will not be able to control how disgusting and debaucherous he becomes, because he won't be able to admit he's a fucking addict. A useless addict.
Right. Who continue to affirm existence. In all of its...
Affirm existence in all of its, yes, skin-ripped-off horror. So, right, you just label what you're affirming, okay? Don't keep hiding behind this life word. Describe what you're affirming.
Misery. Okay. So what does Gary have to say about this kind of individual? This prototypical savage, if you will, from the Brave New World. Well, he has to say that they're delusional. He has to say that they're just drug addicts. They're insane. What?
Yeah, well, they're retarded. Okay, they're stupid. They've been brought up with a notion, an idea has been drowned into their head. Fables and fairy tales and happily ever after and all kinds of mush have affirmed all of their negative instincts. Their competitive nature has been affirmed throughout their life. All the conniving and the weaseling and the scheming has all been affirmed throughout their life. So yes, they've ended up becoming something where they're going to affirm the very thing. It's like the victim of abuse becoming an abuser. It's just that they're too connected to it. It's part of their life, so they think it's part of life. And so they'll be willing to impose the same thing on somebody else because they'll be able to contrive some kind of nonsense like it did me no harm. Okay, they'll think that somebody else being possessed by the same possession, the same addiction, is going to do them well because somehow they love themselves, so it must be a great thing to be possessed. That's all. You're just possessed by a stupid notion that you're accomplishing something, and you're doing it at a preposterous cost that you're not fully appreciating.
Why? Because they don't see the world in the way that he sees it.
Well, whatever. It's not about how somebody sees the world. I mean, obviously, if you see something as wrong, if I see something taking place, there's two cats fighting, and I decide to separate them because, they really don't need to bother doing that crap. And somebody could have a counter opinion and say, no, it's just best to let them work it out for themselves. Okay, you got a counter opinion. Well, it's counter to mine. I'm going to act on my opinion. I've qualified my opinion. I've thought about it. I think this is the right course of action, so I'm going to articulate and explain it and do it. But I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I know it's wrong, but I'll just sit on my hands. No, Adolf Hitler's a bad guy, but it's not my responsibility. I'm not going to get involved. That's really fucking idiotic. There's places in life where you have to make a choice. You have to take a decision to be decisive in defense of what you believe in. And it has to be what you believe in. So as long as you're rigorous in attempting to be sure you're right, well, that's all the best you can do. And arguments like this aren't going to convince me I'm wrong. You're not explaining why life is good. You're just saying it is. You little red Buddha guy or whatever the fuck that statue, you're just saying, I'm a little trolley guy and I know the truth. Well, you got to do a little better than that.
Philosophy has long since been given up by Gary. Okay, and this is a matter of comfortability for him. You see.
Yeah, it's like that's all makes some sort of sense. So that's a counter argument. So somebody puts on the table reproducing cell, consumption and reproduction. Island planet, cannibalism, psychology that's built just to keep the worms wiggling through the mush, So somebody puts that on the table, and this is your counter argument. This is how you explain how that's not the truth. Yeah, fuck you.
Now, one of the last things that disturbs me is Gary says things like, you're more evil than the God of the Old Testament, and your unwillingness to not push the red button to conference report.
Again, yeah, you've mentioned it 3 times now, and I've explained it, and it was explained in the video, okay, that I was just making the comparison, that even the stupid, moronic God, okay, attempted to take responsibility when his little experiment went wrong.
And, Gary hasn't pushed the red button for himself. He wants to prattle on about how stupid
here we go again. So, yeah, well, you're prattling, but whatever. Everybody can play that game, can't they? Yeah, well, look, I've made a ton of videos. Yeah, okay, you haven't watched them, fine. But I've articulated this point a billion frickin' times. And so I'll go over it one more time. I don't see a huge difference in consciousness, human beings, okay? There's 7 billion unique human beings, but their uniqueness is mostly subtle and cosmetic. It's superficial. There are ideologies and ways of thinking and ways of being, okay? And I don't see it as unlikely that, in essence, the substance of what I am, the substance of what I feel towards life in the world, will be re-experienced by one of your next victims, one of these new victims you keep injecting into the game. So I don't get out, okay? I kill myself, I'm not out of the game. Consciousness is still in the game. Sentience is still vulnerable. So I've won no victory if I'm leaving that vulnerable. So if I can stay around long enough to talk even one person into not having kids, well, then I've lowered my risk. I've lowered my risk of being shoved on that fucking roller coaster again by another one of you fucking fucktards. All right? And that's valuable. All right? And it's valuable not just from my selfish perspective, but yes, from my absolute philosophical perspective, that's a good. Okay? So there's no... you know, I mean, you know, if my life gets uncomfortable enough, I'm going to be bailing, and I'm not going to be proud of bailing. I'm not going to say, oh, I bailed out. But yeah, I'm going to do it because I'm a selfish creature, and I'm going to do what's in my interest. And so, yeah, there's going to be a time where that's going to happen. Okay, I'm not going to die slow. I'm not going to, you know, waste. All right, I'm going to get the fuck out when it's time to get the fuck out. But it's my decision when I've used up whatever productivity I have left. And it's just lame bullshit for you to sit there and say there's some sort of hypocrisy there. My interest is the future. My interest is not this present.
Everyone is that continues to affirm existence in their own life.
If it was their own life, again, we're not talking about people affirming their own life. We're talking about people affirming the concept of life, the carnage that takes place in nature, the carnage that takes place in the human circumstance. That's what we're talking about. And we're talking about the future. We're not talking about people affirming their own fucking stupid jackass life.
How evil people are for not pushing the red button. And he hasn't pushed the red button for himself.
Again, like I said, how does pushing the red button for myself do anything to protect myself from the future? Okay, because myself is a snowflake. All right, it's not a snowflake named Gary. It's just a snowflake. It's a human consciousness. It's a high consciousness even. My concern is for apes, and my concern is for wildebeest, and my concern is for elephants, and my concern is for any fucking animal on this goddamn planet, all right, who's going to have to experience horror because of this system we're part of, this insidious, disgusting, fucktarded, moronic system that you're affirming as being productive and accomplishing something worth the carnage. You're a fucking idiot.
The hypocrisy is evident. Just some of my thoughts on the issue.
Yeah, well, just some of your little weasel squeaks. That's all they were, just little weasel squeaks. Squeak, 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 squeak. You little weaselly squeaks. That's all you fucking goddamn did. You didn't make an argument. You didn't explain why life is worthy of affirmation. So explain why life is worthy of affirmation. Why it should continue. Why the negatives are outweighed by the substantial and meritorious positives of your first Lamborghini or whatever it is you're after, statue guy. So anyway, yeah, enough of that. Yeah, pretty lame, fella.